good afternoon. Last week we spoke about creating the object model, the logical object model within Salesforce. Today we're going to be talking about creating the object model within Salesforce. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Let's see, let me switch my view to where you're seeing my Salesforce. Now, if you go to trailhead.salesforce.com up here in the address bar, you'll be able to sign up. And when you sign up, what that will do is that will create you a developer org. And when you have a developer org, you can go in and you can create objects, you can create basically anything that you can do within the Salesforce platform, you can create there to begin your journey creating items, objects, process builders, communities, things like that within Salesforce. Some of the AppExchange products do have differences that you must keep in mind for licensing purposes as you're installing into a dev org. But for our purposes, what we're going to be showing, creating the object model we went over last week, we should not have any issues. So without any further ado, I already have a dev org. I've done a lot of development in it, experimenting, doing trailheads, things of that nature. And today we're going to be creating the object model. So if I go into the object manager, okay, as you can see on the screen, it's loading at this time. I'm going to go into the account. So the first thing I'm going to do after I go into the account is I'm going to create our record types that we had spoken of. So going into the account, will show me how thing, we can go into the record types. And I already have some record types from other trailheads I've done, obviously sometime in the past, but we're going to create two new record types. So the first record type we're going to create, and let's see, we're just going to create off the master, and we'll call it the employer. Okay, and record type for employer, record type for employer, and we'll make it active. You can enable it for certain profiles. Since this is this is for testing, I'm going to create it for all, enable it for all profiles. Okay, next, and here we can add it to the layout. So for different profiles, you can make different pick list values available as well as record types. So I'm going to make this available for, let's see, I want it available for all. So I'm going to just keep it available on the regular account layout for now. However, it will be available for all. And so save in new. And the second record type we wanted to create was called the candidate. Okay, so candidate. And this is the record type for candidate. And I want it to be active. I'm going to enable it for all the profiles. I'm going to click next. I'm going to make it on the account layout and click save. Okay, so now I've created those record types. The next thing I need to do is I need to go to, I want to check the contact. So the contact and account relationship is a special relationship within Salesforce, and you can have that defined a few different ways. So let me show you how that definition is shown. So if you go into your sharing settings, in the sharing settings, you can see, and sharing settings are for the organization, so it's the organization sharing settings, and they specify the level of access that users need. And you can have different parenting relationships. And what that is when I showed the different markings with the connections between contact and account, those relationships can be defined in part through the sharing settings. And that has some security implications as it pertains to the record types when you go into communities or Service Cloud or Sales Cloud or any type of objects you're building. So in this case, I want to look at the account and I want to see the contact relationship. And this becomes important as I look. Let's see, there is the contact. And the contact is controlled by parent. And so what that means right there, and this is for internal, and for external, it's exactly the same. And that's exactly what I want. What that means is any changes I make to the account will be applicable to the contact, okay? And that's very important as I progress further with this demonstration. I was just verifying this to see what changes I needed to make to the contact. So when I look on the contact, and that's what I want to look at next, and I look at the record types here, I want to create a new one for employer and a new one for candidate, okay? I want those to be aligned with the account, and I want them to be aligned with the account so that at any time those are aligned for the application as we build that out further. So save and new, that was the employer, and now I'm creating the candidate. Enable for the profile. Next, make it on the contact layout and click save. Excellent. Okay, very good. So next we're going to actually create an object, okay? And so when I create an object, and so over here on the right hand side, this is lightning view. There's a classic view as well. I typically stay in lightning view now, as that is what Salesforce best practices says, but there are people that are used to and continue to work in the classic view, which we can go into at a later time. So I'm going to create an object. And when you create an object, there are fields indicated with the red that you must fill out. I'm going to create the requisition. So in our depiction, the requisition was an object. That's called an object or a table in databases. It's an object that we need to create. And there will be red to indicate these must be filled out. And then there are various options. I'm going to go through some of those at this time. So requisition was the name. It does not start with the sound of a vowel. For ADA compliance, you can put that in, and then it will, when it verbally speaks back, it will actually sound correct. So let's see, the label, so plural label, so these will be requisitions. And then job postings, let's see, prospecting, etc. And I'm going to make this the help. I'm going to make standard Salesforce. I don't have any kind of special Visualforce page. We can do that at another time. The label and the format. So you can make it so that your database auto numbers. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it text driven. I would like to report on this in the future. I would like activities on this in the future. I would like to track field history. And I would like to allow this in chatter groups. We'll be using those at a later time as well. The object classifications, this has to do with some of the lower configurations that have to do with integrations, that have to do with security. And I'm going to keep these in place at this time. We will be using these later. I'm going to make it deployed. In development means it won't be available for general use. Deployed means it is available for general use. We're in a sandbox at this time, or a developer org. So I'm going to make this completely deployed. I'm going to allow searching on it. I want people to be able to search on it. Let's see. People should be able to add notes, and I don't need it to launch in a new tab. Okay. Oh wait. Yes, I do want it to launch in a new tab so I can show you the actual object after I've created it. So I'm going to click save. And I have to give it a tab style. So let me go here. Let's see, where is that? Click that again. So you get to click a tab style. This is a requisition. I really don't have any particular, so I'm going to go with a train. I'm going to go with a train and click next. I typically will go default off. There will be times when you don't want profiles to be able to access. So on this tab, what we're doing is we're defining the access for any particular profile, whether they can actually see this object's records or not. And I'm creating what's called a tab. So the tab allows people to get to the records. At this time, I am going to want people to get to the records, but I'm going to actually structure that very tightly. But when you're in the back end, as we are right now, I'm going to have a default off, and I'll show you what that means as we progress. Okay, so I'm going to click next, and then I will include the tab on any of the portals, any of the existing applications. So this is for apps, for custom applications. I'm going to include the tab, and I'm going to click save. From here now we'll have a view of the object in Lightning. So the first view you have is the details, and this gives you the overall what is enabled for this. At any time you could edit certain portions of this. The next item submenu is fields and relationships, so you can create fields on here, and we'll be getting into defining what this object is and its particular fields or columns at a future time. You can also define page layouts. So what will be on the layout? There's something called Lightning record pages. Since we're in Lightning, we're using Lightning record pages. These can be useful, and I will show you how we can, in that future time, add Lightning components and items to these Lightning record pages. Buttons, links, and actions. So on any of the pages, you will see that there are buttons and there's actions, things that you can do. And you define all those for a particular object or table here. Compact layouts, these are for, you could think of these for mobile devices, but these are also used within actions. We'll be using this later. Field sets. Field sets are very helpful for one very particular use, and that's called SOSL. In other words, search capability. Field sets are very helpful in search capability, and that's because when you create a field set, it creates indexing within the search database within Salesforce. Object limits. So this is good to understand. In fact, this is relatively new to current release, where you can see the limits your objects currently are against. Okay, and there are limits within Salesforce. It's a very controlled database structure, and it's very important to stay within those limits, as not staying in those limits causes issues with your applications. Okay, record types. For this, we don't have any particular record types at this time. This record type we'll end up defining at a later time if we need them. At this time, I don't think we do. Related lookup filters. So at this time, there's no related lookup filters. Search layouts. So these are the layouts when people search for something. This will show what the layout looks like. Also, when people do what's called a lookup, or they click on a lookup icon, it will show what are the columns that will display for this object. Okay. Triggers. Triggers is a more advanced topic. We're going to stay mostly with configuration. I'll get into triggers much further down the road, but at this time, what you need to know is triggers is more programmatic, definitely not configuration based, definitely more hiring a developer. Okay, and then validation rules. Validation rules are the way you keep your data in check, or you can make it so that if one field or column has a particular value, another field or column should have a certain value. So it's basically data validation when we talk about validation rules. Okay, so one field I know that we're going to need, and I've already spoken of it, is this relationship, the requisition to the account. Okay, so I'm going to create that relationship at this time. New, and this is going to be a lookup relationship. It's not a master child. There are three types of relationship fields that you can create. These are data types on your field. And a lookup relationship, what that does is it allows you to have different permissions related to this object. Master child, as I explained earlier, it follows the sharing settings down. So it limits some of the flexibility within your application. If you have very tight security parameters, having a master detail relationship can be very helpful. Also, you can define aggregations. So what that means is if you have a number of records below it, you can perform mins, max, things like that with fields on your master object, okay? We aren't going to be doing that with this. So this lookup relationship is what we will be using. There's also an external lookup relationship. That's for using with outside systems. We aren't going to be doing that. It's important to consider these relationships and understand them as they're defined. Once you pick a relationship type, it can be challenging to alter it in the future. So having a firm understanding of what you intend on building with your application is very important when you pick this relationship. I'll click next. It's going to be related to the account as I've already depicted, and click next. And here it is the account, and the description is going to be employer with the requisition. In fact, upon thinking about it, I'm going to call it the employer account. I'm going to delete that out. And if I tab, that will autofill it in. When Salesforce autofills it in, this must have no spaces in it, and they will replace spaces with underscores. In the help text, I spelled that wrong, requisition. The help text here we go. And the relationship name will be requisitions, that's fine. It will always be required. There should always be an employer requisition. Or maybe not. We'll keep it flexible this time. And then you can put in show filter settings. We aren't going to have filter settings. I can, if I wish, have this be, so I could say that the account record type name, so now the record type name always must equal employer. The record type must always equal employer for this field. And that's good. I want that. Okay. And so value does not match. It's required. Okay. So that's how you would set up a filter. I'm not going to set up a filter, but that's how you would set it up. This is helpful if you're trying to keep your data persistent across the organization. Again, at this time, I'm not really particular about that. I'm the only one in here, and I'm just building a sample application. But it's important to understand that this is here because it can help keep the data in line with other systems or within your own org, depending on how you're setting it up. So now clicking next. I want it visible to everyone. I'm going to click next. And it is, I do want this account on the layout. That's what this is saying is, do I want it on the layout? And I'm going to click next. And then do I want it on these as a related list for these other layouts? And yes, I do. So I'm going to click save. And that's basically it. We've now set up the object model within Salesforce as depicted. We have the account. We have the record type of employer and candidate. We have the contact. I've also added the record types there. Now we have the requisition, and we have this object. So You might wonder, what does that look like? And so if I go back to the object manager, there's this thing called the Schema Builder. And if I click on the Schema Builder, you're able to, and sometimes there's a little delay on this one because it is showing everything in the org. I can add in all of the items that I just picked and I just created. So I don't want to see the lead anymore. I don't want to see the opportunity. I want to see the requisition. Okay. I can move that. Is there anything else checked? I believe all we have is the 3. Yes. So I can go over here. I can bring the account up. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay. I want to make it very similar to what we're looking at on my board. Okay. So now you can see, I can zoom in a little bit. You can see now that we have the account. You can't really see the record types here, but you can see the relationship where it has that multi-pronged mini, and then it has one up here. You can see also on the requisition where it has multi-pronged here and mini. Within Salesforce, you can build this. You can actually build, you can add fields. You can do a lot of things with the Schema Builder without ever going into that other view. Within Salesforce, I found that there's at least 3 ways to do any one thing. I showed you creating the object through the object manager, and that's typically what people will do. However, there are other ways to do it. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you've learned a little bit more about Salesforce, and let's continue the journey on part 3. That's going to be coming up. In that, what we'll be doing is we'll start to look at the layouts. We'll start to look at maybe some validations, some field filters, things of that nature, really getting the application starting to add some meat to it. And then we'll be looking at creating a Visualforce page with a Lightning Web component, and then building out the community and posting that to a community so you can see it on a front-end web page. This is going to be an exciting process. Thank you all for joining in. Look forward to talking to you soon.